Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the official launch of our new initiative that is all about building an even stronger university at Albany. I'd like to start by extending a very special welcome to Alma, Clayton, Pedersen, and Daryl Smith, who have traveled great distances to share their expertise and their insights this morning with us and to assist us in our conversation over the next 2 days. All this week, we are celebrating the many strengths of the university and also thinking about how can we advance the university at Albany. I think we all would agree that at UAlbany, diversity is a great strength that enriches our environment and is absolutely critical to our ability to move this university forward. I believe this environment can be even stronger when we link diversity and inclusion even closer to the academic mission of this university. And that's what UAcccess is all about, is how do we systematically think differently? How do we start to operate differently about the issues of diversity and inclusion, and making sure that first and foremost that it emanates from our department, our colleges, and our schools, and then percolate its way up through the rest of this academic institution. To achieve this goal, we are launching UAcccess, which stands for UAlbany Collectively Creating Excellence, Scholarship, and Success. This initiative will foster greater success across the UAlbany community, and that is why I'm particularly pleased to be able to launch this initiative during this inaugural week. The central aim of UAcccess is to bring all of us around the table to move forward collectively, and I'd like to emphasize all of us. That's each and every member of the faculty, staff, students, and those that support this great university. Because I believe, and I know you believe as well, that it doesn't matter what part of the country we're from or what country we're from, where we call home, nor what the background of our parents, their social income status. Doesn't matter what your primary language is, your sexual orientation, your physical abilities, or if, when, and to whom we pray. None of that matters. We are all here at this point in time and at this place, and what we want and what we need to do is tap into our collective energy for all of us to work effectively and advance in the critical work ahead. We all need to help create the kind of university where respect is appreciated and appreciation for difference is one of our distinguishing characteristics. We want to ensure that the environment in which our classrooms operate, our laboratories, our workspace, our athletic facilities, residence hall, promotes teamwork, builds confidence, and respect and inclusion. And I believe when all of this is incorporated into our daily work, the results will be this thing we call inclusive excellence. The University of Albany, as we all know, has had a history of working toward diversifying our campus and our community and diversifying the experience for our students, faculty, and staff. UAlbany's commitment to diversity and equity is deeply rooted in our historic mission as a public institution that strives for academic excellence and access for all students regardless of their background and their social economic condition. The university has made concerted and significant efforts to create this multicultural environment in which all members, including students, faculty, and staff, can succeed and flourish. Yes, significant progress has been made. However, we all know, if we're honest with ourselves, there is much more that we can and we must do. We want to create an environment that supports all of the faculty and staff and that carries out our mission of teaching, research, and service. We want to make sure that all have an equal opportunity in all of our processes at this university, starting with our promotion and tenure process. We also want to make sure that we support and respect research and scholarships scholarship that reflect a broader range of perspective. That is, that we want to support those who are doing research that focus on issues of diversity and inclusion, research that focuses on underrepresented groups and people. We want to make sure we have the kind of environment where that research is viewed at the core of the academic mission and not at the margins, the way that is typically done in far too many places and far too many universities across this country. We want our conversation to be genuine. We want it to be invigorated by the broad diversity of ideas and opinion. We want to ensure that moving around the campus isn't hindered, and we want the campus to be a safe place for people to express their ideas and their identities. We don't want to judge people by what's on the outside. We want to get to the core, the essence of the person, and determine value by what's inside. That's how we advance this great university. We have learned some valuable lessons along the way, and what I've found is that diversity is not an end to itself. In order to truly benefit from diversity, we must be more than just concerned about the numbers. We have an obligation to ensure that we have faculty of color and students of color, but the numbers is only a small part of what we must do to achieve a truly inclusive, diverse university. We learned that diversity and inclusion must be incorporated into our mission and be part of our daily existence. It must be a core value of this great university. Diversity and inclusion must be seen as a strategy and that's necessary to achieve academic and scholarly excellence. That's what we mean when we talk about inclusive excellence. And I think you all would agree there's not a better place than higher education for something like inclusive excellence to take hold. Universities have the responsibility to provide students the values, the skills, the knowledge that is needed to become critical thinkers and ethical decision makers. Universities have the responsibility to position future leaders as global citizens in an increasingly multicultural and multilingual, multi-religious, and multifaceted society. And universities must create the kind of environment where students can strive and function in a diverse learning environment. We can no longer afford to sit on the sideline. We must work to achieve our highest aspiration. We must provide the best possible education and working environment for all. I'd like to also note that a lot of hard work and planning went into developing our Access initiative. The President's Council on Diversity and Inclusion, led by his co-chair, Dr. Tamra and Dr. Edelgard Wulfert, spent the last year and a half talking with many across this campus. They listened to what you had to say. They pointed out our successes, but we also note that there are challenges. They prepared a report that calls for us to pursue our diversity and inclusion to become more deliberate and multidimensional and highly coordinated. The Council reports also includes a number of recommendations which I will be asking my leadership team to turn into measurable, implementable goals. So now is the time to take steps to advance our campus and create an environment of inclusion and excellence. The Council on Diversity and Inclusion will play a leading role in promoting and supporting UAcccess initiatives. As part of this whole process, the Council also is developing a vision statement and a working definition of what it means to be diverse at the University of Albany. Their current draft vision statement says, and I quote, "The University of Albany promotes inclusive excellence, and respect for persons of all cultures, backgrounds, and orientation." The working definition diversity says, in our definition of and commitment to diversity, we include respect for difference related to race, ethnicity, sex, gender, identity, expression, sexual orientation, age, religion, spiritual practice, physical and mental ability, wellness, social economic status, and national origin. As a university, we embrace human diversity and collective learning across individuals and institutional levels. Such inclusivity is essential to reaching our highest goal of excellence. I would like to take this time to publicly thank Dr. Marner and Dr. Wulfert and the members of the President's Council on Diversity for all of their hard work and for getting us to the point that we are today. And to thank all of you very, very much for the commitment and dedication that you bring to this work. In a few minutes, you will be hearing from Dr. Marner and Wulfert as they provide additional details about the Council, its recommendations. I encourage you to listen because they represent me, they represent the vision that we've tried to articulate of what's required to advance this university. But this isn't just about their work, it has to be about all of our work. And I assure you that I'm committed to UAcccess, and I'm very much committed to the work that we're about to do. And this commitment didn't just develop since I've been at the University at Albany. I think most of you know my first administrative work at the University of Minnesota was in the Office for Equity and Diversity. And Alma, and both you and Daryl probably remember that was a point in time when you were told if you wanted to kill your chances of ever being a senior university level administrator, start your administrative career in a diversity office. Well, I never listened to critics, and I guess that shows. Subsequently, we were involved in work, and it's when I first met Daryl when we started something called the Keeping Our Faculty Conference back in 1996 or 97, and she was one of the first speakers. And so I guess my point is, this work is something that's in my DNA as much as anything that I bring to the table as a university president. And it's work that I care deeply about, and it's work that I'm absolutely convinced that as a university community, we are well poised to do this right, folks. And with your help and your support, we will get it right, because the education of our students, the success of this university as a public urban research university clearly depends upon it. I think some of you know that I'm also, notwithstanding the fact that I grew up in the cotton fields of southwestern Georgia, I'm also a downhill skier. And you might ask, well, how do you get involved in skiing, being from the deep south? And well, I guess that's what happens when you spend so many winters in Minnesota. It opens up your mind to all kinds of things that are different. And I think there is some analogy between, me starting skiing at a ripe old age of about 48 before I ever strapped on my first pairs of skis. And I think what I've learned about skiing is that, it's the natural pull of gravity that allows you to make it down the mountain. But also along the way, there are a couple of unnatural things that you must do in order to be successful in navigating your way down the mountain. First and foremost, what they teach you in ski school is that you have to lean forward. Now, it's an unnatural act to lean forward while you're going down a steep decline. But the irony of it is, the more you lean forward, the slower you will go, because if you lean backwards, the faster you're going to go, and you will be out of control. So I guess my point is we have to be very, very balanced and think out of the box. And perhaps for some people, some of the things that we're going to be discussing might seem to be unnatural or may seem to butt up against their core values. But I can tell you that exclusive excellence isn't skiing, it's not a sport, but the two have a few things that are very common. And I think we have worked to develop a plan on how to get inclusive excellence operationalized at this university. We didn't just jump into this arena. We've been working on this for several months now, if not over a year. And over the next 2 days, with your help and the expertise of the consultants that we've brought in, I am certain that we will achieve our goals of moving this university to the next level of excellence. We are ready for a successful ride, and with all the things that we have in place and all the time that all of us will be committing to this effort, I am certainly convinced that we will get this job done. We will advance this university to the next level of excellence, and the way that we will get there is through the notion of inclusive excellence, and that will be truly not only just a core value we articulate in mission statements, but also reflect on how we teach, how we do our scholarly work, how we reach out to communities, and as your president, how we lead this university. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. I'd like to now ask Dr. Minor, our Chief Diversity Officer and Assistant Vice President for the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, to come to the podium. I'm afraid I will not be able to stay with you for the whole time. My thoughts and my wishes and good thoughts will be with you, and so let's get the work done. Thank you very much.
Good morning, and thank you, President Jones. Your support and leadership are what's needed to move UAcces forward. I also appreciate your acknowledgement that the work ahead of us will require that we all come to the table ready to change and alter our present to ensure that we have a future where all are respected, appreciated, and accepted as they are. Today, we officially launch UAcces, University at Albany collaboratively creating excellence, scholarship, and success. Now, I'm able to stand here and take part in announcing this launch because of all the work and efforts that have been made over the years in the area of diversity here at UAlbany. I want to thank all of those who have stood at the forefront of making UAlbany more diverse and moving us toward greater inclusion. I thank you for your work, and I know that we could not be here today without all of your efforts. So again, thank you. For the remainder of this day and tomorrow, we will be talking about how to implement UAcces. Shortly, Dr. Alma Clayton Pedersen, a nationally recognized expert in the area of diversity and inclusion, will talk with us about inclusive excellence, because I know there's lots of questions with regard to what inclusive excellence is, what it will mean for our day-to-day work, and for the institution as a whole. Dr. Darrell G. Smith, a professor at Claremont Graduate University, will speak with us this afternoon about creating a framework for our diversity and inclusion efforts, as well as evaluating our progress. Smith has had extensive experience in the area of organizational implications of diversity assessment and evaluation, because we want to make sure that we have a firm and solid foundation for evaluating our progress, so that we are sure that what we are doing will enable us to accomplish our goals. Dr. Clayton Pedersen will be back with us tomorrow to talk specifically about how the diversity on our campus can help us achieve excellence in our classrooms as well as our workspaces. And finally, tomorrow afternoon, we will hear from Provost Phillips and President Jones about the importance of our next steps in advancing UAcces. So how do we get here to this place? It's been a long journey that started long before I came to the University at Albany. But since the appointing of the President's Council on Diversity, the Council has had many opportunities to speak with many of you regarding how we can advance UAlbany and ensure that all faculty, staff, and students are included, respected, and involved. The President's Council on Diversity was empowered to identify strategies that facilitate the university's movement toward inclusive excellence. The Council formed subcommittees and conducted a thorough analysis in 4 areas where appropriate interventions might make a significant impact. Those areas were faculty and staff campus climate, student campus climate and retention, leadership development, and faculty recruitment and retention. And I'd like to take this opportunity to quickly introduce our subcommittee chairs and their members, and I ask that they remain standing until all council members have been introduced. Chairing the Leadership Development Subcommittee was Dean Catherine Breyer Lawson from the School of Social Welfare. Members included Jose Cruz, Rockefeller College of Public Affairs and Policy, and Andy Lyons from the College of Arts and Sciences. Chairing the Faculty Staff Campus Climate Subcommittee was Carol Stinger from the Office of Student Success. Members included Robert Andrea Jr. from the Office of the Provost, Joel Bloom from Institutional Research, Dean Fullahan from CNSE, Robert Miller Jr. from the School of Social Welfare. Chairing the Faculty Recruitment and Retention Subcommittee was Robbie Musa from the College of Arts and Sciences, and Robbie is away at a conference but will join us tomorrow. Membership included Mary Applegate from the School of Public Health, Pinka Chatterjee from the College of Arts and Sciences, Yenaso Gulati from Undergraduate Education, Lorraine Joam from the School of Education, Lee McElroy from Athletics, Miriam Trementozzi from the President's Office. The Student Retention and Campus Climate Subcommittee was chaired by Karen Lascoco from the College of Arts and Sciences. Members included Joel Bloom from Institutional Research, Ray Bromley from International Education, Vince Labella from CNSE, Vivian Ng and Catherine Trent, both from the College of Arts and Sciences. I also want to recognize one of our newest members, Max Lifshitz, also from the College of Arts and Sciences. In addition, there are a few support people who have been very valuable to the council, and I'd like to ask them to stand up as well. Gail Cameron from the President's Office, as well as staff from the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, Jeffrey Gabriel, Sharon Micah, and Don Knight Thomas. Let's give them a hand. I thank you all for all of your hard work. Now, these subcommittees used a variety of assessment methods, including focus groups, interviews, and analysis of existing and new data. All of the subcommittees worked independently, but identified a number of overlapping issues and similar concerns. Central to our findings was that issues of diversity and inclusion have not permeated all sectors of the campus and are often viewed as an individual rather than a university concern. Another finding was that recurring acts of exclusion and marginalization still exist. While there were no reports of overt, egregious acts of discrimination, subtle forms of everyday discrimination are still affecting the university's day-to-day dynamics and have a negative impact on productivity and the overall educational experience. The Council's recommendations have been turned over to President Jones, as he's already indicated, and he is in the process of charging his leadership team to examine the material and to develop measurable goals. Now, as has already been said by the President, inclusive excellence is not just a one-time hit it and move on effort. Inclusive excellence is how we will conduct business and is one of the strategies for advancing UAlbany. I'd like to now introduce my colleague and co-chair of the President's Council on Diversity, College of Arts and Sciences Dean Edelgard Wulfert.
Thank you very much, Tamra, and thank you for giving a brief account of all the work that the President's Council on Diversity has accomplished to date. But much work, of course, still lies ahead of us if we as a campus community continue to embrace and advance the goal of inclusive excellence. Now, we have talked a lot about inclusive excellence, and I think at this point some of you may wonder, actually, what can I do in order to further this goal? So how can I become part of this mission? I hope that a number of questions will be addressed in the presentations today and tomorrow. But in addition, I would like to tell you briefly about an initiative that the President's Council for Diversity just has begun to start. And this initiative is we are working together with the Senate University Life Council. And the initiative is a year-long event that we call Dialogue in Action. Dialogue in Action is designed for tenured or tenure-track faculty and consists of monthly presentations by a guest speaker on a topic related to inclusion in the classroom. This is followed by small group discussions which allow the faculty the opportunity for further conversations, dialogue, and exchange of ideas. The group sessions will be facilitated by a couple of our own faculty, Professor Karen Loskoko from the Department of Sociology and Professor Walter Little from the Department of Anthropology. Deans of the various schools and colleges have invited or are in the process of inviting faculty members to participate in this Dialogue in Action. And so if you have already received an invitation, please be sure to take advantage of this opportunity, because it really will be a wonderful opportunity for all of us to get involved in this initiative. The initiative will begin in October. Upcoming sessions will explore topics such as teaching in a diverse and inclusive classroom and providing support to women in science and mathematics. Further sessions will explore teaching about controversial issues, identifying and managing classroom hard moments, and exploring unconscious biases, to name but a few. Participants will also be able to suggest topics which may be integrated in the conversations. So now, why are these sessions important? Psychologist Abraham Maslow said, if all you have is a hammer, then you tend to treat everything like a nail. And so the purpose of these small group sessions is to provide faculty with strategies and additional tools that they can take back to their classrooms and successfully implement. Parenthetically, I should mention that a similar program is being developed for our staff, and we will soon unveil this program. So nobody will be left out here at UAlbany. We have to do it stepwise. And so I would also like to share with you that the Office of Diversity and Inclusion has adopted Enrich Learning as a theme for the year. To put it in context, let me read a quote from Henry Giroux, the author of Border Crossing, Cultural Worker and the Politics of Education. It says, "Can learning take place if, in fact, it silences the voices of the people it is supposed to teach? The answer is yes. People learn that they don't count." We won't let this happen here at UAlbany. This is why we have made it our mission to continue to promote an environment where inclusive excellence exists. Research conducted by Carnegie Mellon has shown that the climate of a learning environment has a significant effect on students' learning, because it not only regulates what is being learned in terms of curricula as well as citizenship skills, but it also engenders emotions that impact learning and channel energies either away from learning or toward it. The learning environment communicates expectations placed upon students, and it impacts their persistence. But we also know that learning does not just occur in the classroom, but all over campus whenever people get together. An environment of inclusive excellence is characterized by a welcoming atmosphere in which each and every person is encouraged to contribute and is respected and valued. To create such an environment, there are things we all can do or continue to do. We can examine our assumptions, and we can see differences as differences, not as deficiencies. We can use multiple examples and diverse examples in the classroom. People learn differently. Not everybody learns in the same way. And if somebody does not understand a concept that we explain, well then that doesn't mean that the person cannot learn. It just means that maybe we can find a different way of explaining in order to clarify the concept. And finally, we can be fair and equitable, which does not mean that we treat everyone the same or that we expect the same outcome of everybody, but it means that we provide the same chance for all. I could add many more examples, but in the interest of time, let me conclude by saying, I know that in our hearts we all have a deep commitment to inclusive excellence. And that is why we are excited to launch UAcccess, and we are fueled by the support of President Jones as we advance the initiative for UAlbany. And to conclude with his example of the downhill skiing, I'm a downhill skier too, and so I know what it is when you are on top of a mountain. If you want to get home, you have to get down that mountain. So one way or another. Maybe not everybody will end up becoming an expert skier, but I promise you, we will all get down that mountain. And I would now like to introduce our student ambassador, Emma Spaltai. She is a junior and she double majors in Chinese and English studies. She's also a member of the National Society of Collegiate Scholars and an administrative assistant for the Student Association. Emma.
Thank you, Professor. Good morning, everyone. My name is Emma Spaltai, and as she said, I'm a senior at the university with a dual major in Chinese and English studies. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce our keynote speaker for the UAcccess launch, Dr. Alma Clayton Pedersen. Dr. Clayton Pedersen, who will be with us today and tomorrow, is a leader in diversity education. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the Emeritus Consulting Group, a Chicago-based firm that uses the organizational development principles to assist nonprofit, public, and education entities in enhancing their efficacy for the public good. More importantly for us today, Clayton Pedersen is a senior scholar at the American Association of Colleges and Universities, where she is directing the work of a 3-year project entitled Preparing Critical Faculty for the Future, funded by the National Science Foundation. Clayton Pedersen has worked on campus diversity issues in a variety of ways. She and colleagues at Vanderbilt University, where she worked for 15 years before joining the AAC&U, developed the Diversity Opportunity Tool, a CD through which students explore challenging situations of potential intergroup conflict. She also co-authored the volume Enacting Diverse Learning Environments, Improving the Climate for Racial, Ethnic Diversity in Higher Education, released in 1999. This publication features some of the most significant new research on what works to engage students in powerful, diverse learning environments. As you will see shortly, Clayton Pedersen is a dynamic speaker who provides consultation on faculty professional development, program evaluation, diversity and institutional change to trustees, academic departments, administrative units, and entire campus endeavors, including 2- and 4-year public and private colleges and universities, as well as K-12 school districts and organizations. She is consulted nationally from Maine to California and internationally in Canada, China, and the UK. She advises foundations, businesses, regional consortia, and national associations. She holds a Bachelor of Science from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and both the MED and PhD from Vanderbilt University. Let's receive Dr. Alma Clayton Pedersen and listen intently as she talks about embracing diverse learning environments, challenges of making excellence inclusive. Dr. Clayton Pedersen.
I guess I'm going to get hot real quick, so I'm going to take this off. I want to thank you so much for the wonderful comments that you've made about me, Emma. Sometimes it's really hard to follow such an introduction because now the pressure's on. I got to live up to it. I hope I can do that today. And I want to thank President Jones and my good friend Tamra, I'm going to call you Tamra if you don't mind, for inviting me to be here. And most importantly, I'm honored to be with you because you've shown your commitment just by being here today. You didn't have to come. This was an invitation, and you rose to the challenge and came. And I'm hopeful you'll find that it's been worth your while. I'd like to invite those people who are standing on the sidelines. There is some wonderful seats right up here in front, if you'd like to come and sit down. Let me tell you what I'm going to do while they're moving their way forward. I'm going to first provide I'm sorry, I have this part. I'm going to first provide you with a very brief exercise, and then I'm going to set my alarm so I stop on time. Then I'm going to offer you some working definitions that will help explain the concept of inclusive excellence and the work of making excellence inclusive. Note concept versus work. I'll then speak briefly about the means by which we move along our journey towards inclusive excellence, and I'll conclude with some large group discussion and some exercise and conversation. I said I'd start with an exercise, so let's do that. If you've got a piece of paper, if not, just take anything that's on the table except those things that have 1, 2, 3, 4 on them. Now, this is a private exercise. This is not something I want you to talk to your colleagues about. And we're going to take just 1 minute, literally. And I'm going to really time you. And I want you to answer this first question. How do you define diversity? 1 minute. No, the answer's not up here. It's down in your head. Write it down. We're going to get to these questions in a minute. "30 seconds. Okay, stop. Wherever you are, stop. Now I want you to answer this next question. However you've defined diversity, what has been the greatest impact that increasing diversity on your campus has had on your individual role, whether that role be a student, a faculty member, or community member? Has it had an impact? And if so, what's been the greatest impact? I'll give you 1 more minute to do that, starting right now. "30 more seconds. Okay, stop. Now, this last question has to do with measuring whether or not you're making progress. So, how effective would you say your efforts have been? How would you characterize the effectiveness of those efforts? 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Because that should come right quickly since you've been thinking about this for a while. Okay. I'm not going to talk a little bit, but I'll talk a little bit later why I asked to time this and why that's important. But I'm going to go on and say that regardless of your specific answer, most of you have probably said that higher education has done a good job of increasing and incorporating students and faculty from diverse populations and backgrounds into the life of campus, and of infusing diversity-related topics into the curriculum. But effective diversity work should also raise profound questions about higher education's mission and purpose. So profound is the impact of diversity that a new approach of doing higher education is necessary. Note I said doing higher education, not doing diversity. I'm frequently told that gatherings such as this often only attract the choir. I'm sure many of you would agree with this comment. How many of you would consider yourselves part of the choir? Raise your hand. I like it. Well, what I'm about to say is not designed to dismiss the hard work that you've already done, but the choir needs rehearsal. The choir needs to sing with greater fidelity, and the choir, most importantly, needs new music. That's what we're here to talk about today. The benefits of embracing inclusive excellence and the challenge of making excellence inclusive. The current institutional engagement with diversity is like composing music without the ability to read musical notation, and I know that because I don't know music. For example, we've developed scores of isolated diversity initiatives, and I'm going to give you some examples. Outreach and recruitment programs targeted to underrepresented racial and ethnic communities, as well as women of all races and ethnicities in STEM fields. Special student success programs for underprepared students, and financial aid packages to increase access to higher education. Are these connected? Too often not. Too often our initiatives are insufficiently linked to our core academic mission. For example, we encourage students to participate in community service programs and tutor. Yet, we often don't connect their service to the larger social challenges that make tutoring necessary. We could ask students in introductory sociology, anthropology, and history courses to examine and search for potential solutions to educational inequities in our education systems. All too frequently, our initiatives are inadequately coordinated across different parts of the academic endeavor. For example, on many campuses, diversity outreach to students are disconnected from advising systems and support structures. The Supreme Court's decision in the Michigan cases a decade ago didn't leave campuses to conduct business as usual. The court challenged higher education to address diversity as a core dimension of educational excellence. The court did that more than a decade ago. And its decision then meant that colleges and universities needed to connect their diversity efforts to their educational mission and practices more fundamentally and comprehensively than they ever had before. Justice O'Connor said, "We only have about 25 more years." Remember, it was a decade ago. The clock's been ticking. But that decision has been challenged twice since then. Twice. And most recently in the Fisher versus Texas Austin. I want to know what happened to the 25 years we were supposed to have to do this work effectively. It's as if we would wave a wand and previously marginalized people would be brought into the mainstream. Previously under-resourced urban schools would have new books and labs like their wealthier suburban peers. Or the biases that prevent some educators from believing that all students can learn at high levels would miraculously disappear. AAC&U responded to this critical need for resources to do this work by designing inclusive excellence. This was back in the Michigan case, during the Michigan case. This project was funded by the Ford Foundation to explore how colleges and universities can fully utilize its broad diversity as a resource to achieve academic excellence for all students. This initial work sought to understand and then demonstrate how campuses can coherently and comprehensively link their diversity, inclusion, and equity initiatives to their central mission of achieving academic excellence. Our work then sought to provide guidance to institutions on how the commitment and progress leaders had already made can be used to broaden, deepen, and sustain their efforts to connect diversity, equity, and inclusion to excellence. We published I'm sorry for the quality of these, but you know what it's like to clip and copy. We published three monographs as a result of this work. Many of you know Estella Ben-Simone through her equity scorecard work, Damon Williams, who was previously at UConn and then at Madison, now at the National Boys and Girls Club, and Jeff Milam at the University of Maryland previously and now at the University of Arizona. All were lead authors, and with each of the teams who authored these publications were gender and racially and ethnically diverse, so as to bring all of those perspectives to bear on each of their works. These publications sought to re-envision excellence, diversity, and inclusion. It's not surprising that many people define diversity solely in terms of racial and ethnic differences, especially given the particular legacies of race in the United States. Others define diversity in terms of multi-social identity dimensions, such as gender, class, sexual orientation, religion, and ability, but also including race and ethnicity. We recognize the importance of these differences, and we define diversity to include these and other important dimensions that individuals and groups bring to the educational experience, as you see on this slide. This definition of diversity, while necessary, is insufficient for campuses to engage all of its diversity in the service of learning. So going a step further, we define inclusion as the engagement with diversity in the service of learning and knowledge development throughout the educational experience and by all members of the campus community. I need to say a bit about Edgar Beckham. Edgar used to work at the Ford Foundation, not when we got this grant, but he was a senior scholar by that time, and we spent a lot of time talking about how do we talk about inclusive excellence when excellence is itself exclusive. So he said this: let us take control of diversity and its definition. Let us make it mean what we mean. Let us wipe out its deficits and replace them with constructions of meaning that serve as assets to understanding, not merely passive assets, but performing ones that build our capacity to make a world we can live in common. Powerful stuff. Bless his heart. He's no longer with us now. No, he is sorely missed. Many campus leaders recognize that they are ill-equipped to connect their diversity and educational quality efforts. Through Making Excellence Inclusive, we have been helping campuses to establish diversity and inclusion as hallmarks of academic excellence and institutional effectiveness, to operationalize inclusion in all spheres and at all levels of campus functioning, not just in the classroom, but everywhere on the campus, to ensure academic freedom and corollary responsibilities are understood and practiced by students and faculty alike, and to create a reinvigorated 21st century educational process that has diversity and inclusion at its core, not on the margin. Through this work, all students advance in cognitive, affective, and interpersonal sophistication. They also advance in a set of knowledge, skills, and abilities that are vital for participation in the workforce and in society. And these participations include these skills. How many of you are aware of AAC&U's work in the Liberal Education America's Promise? Raise your hand. Okay. You are a AAC&U member campus, and if you're really interested in understanding this, I encourage you to go on site. You have representatives, right? You're a representative. Why you raise your hand? No? Cool. You can have as many as 8 on this campus, so if you're very interested in following this work, I encourage you to ask the provost about becoming a member, and then you get all of these magazines and things for free. But these skills include the knowledge of human cultures and natural and physical world. Mostly we talk about this is the disciplines: mathematics, humanities, histories, and the arts. Intellectual and practical skills that include written and oral communication, inquiry, critical and creative thinking, quantitative literacy and information literacy, as well as teamwork and problem solving. Individual and social responsibility that includes civic knowledge and engagement in local and global understandings. Intercultural knowledge and competencies, ethical reasoning and action. Boy, would we have been in a different place if in 2008 we'd have been thinking ethically. Foundational skills for lifelong learning. But to me, this last one is the most important one in integrative learning. This is the capacity to adapt the knowledge and skills we talked about in these first three and responsibilities that they generate to new settings and new questions. So what does that mean? We often teach in ways that students memorize the answer, they come and take the test, they get their A, and then walk away. What we're talking about in Liberal Education America's Promise is having students experience learning, not just the discrete bits of knowledge, but being able to connect those pieces of knowledge to and apply that knowledge to the challenges, and I would say the very complex challenges we face in this 21st century world. So this integrative learning means that students can bring all of those things together and apply that to novel situations. I would also argue that in all of this, there is a critical role for diversity in achieving these outcomes. Our notion of inclusive excellence re-envisions both quality and diversity. It reflects a striving for educational excellence that has been made more inclusive by decades of work. That is, your work, the choir's work. That work included infusing diversity into recruiting, admissions, and hiring, into curriculum and co-curriculum, and into administrative structures and practices. This striving also embraces newer forms of excellence and expanded ways to measure excellence that take into account research on learning and brain function, such as the seminal work on how people learn, that also take into account the assessment movement and more nuanced accountability structures. Diversity efforts then move beyond numbers of students and numbers of programs as end goals. Instead, diversity and inclusion together become a multi-layered process through which we achieve excellence in learning, excellence in research and teaching, student development, institutional functioning, local and global community engagement, workforce development, and much, much more. It is infused into everything we do and think. We are at a turning point in higher education where traditional indicators of student success and educational quality are under intense scrutiny, both inside and outside of the academy. Recognizing this as a point of transition, my colleagues and I have sought to work with campuses, not simply to weather this transition, but to use this point and moment in time to create a new academy where students are empowered, engaged, and responsible learners. Part of realizing the new academy is in making excellence inclusive. Now, keep in mind the definitions of diversity and inclusion mentioned earlier while I describe the picture of how I view the higher education environment today. Uh-oh, where's my screen? You'll note that each of its components, the buildings, the educators, the support systems, and the learners, are largely thought of as separate from one another, as indicated by the boxes in which they reside. Although they share the same physical space, as illustrated by the circle, campus leaders have divided the parts so that they can be easily managed, monitored, and maintained. My picture includes descriptors, which serve as examples of what's in the boxes. Classrooms and libraries are examples of the learning facilities. Academic advising is one of the learning resources, and professors and career counselors are part of the learning facilitators. And of course, students and faculty are some of the learners. Note, I put students and faculty as learners. So, This environment is more often characterized by isolated functioning of its individual parts. I say this mainly because we can find exceptions of these characterizations at every institution. While there is movement toward interdisciplinary teaching and learning on some campuses, the isolation depicted here is particularly true in the disciplines and manifests by various departments and programs. For the most part, faculty members function within the silos of their disciplines. For example, a history faculty may know scholars in their discipline who live 2,000 miles away in California and don't know a faculty member in psychology who resides in the next building. I see some heads nodding there, right? That's a travesty. Other units and offices function in this same way. So I've added here, let me see if I got this right. Is this my pointer? This is true in student life as well. That we've divided the work that we do in ways that keep us separated and keep us from talking about the things that matter to us most. And that is academic excellence, right? In everything. We're all here about what? Can I hear it? Academic excellence, right? Whether you're a researcher, whether you're in the lab, whether you're teaching in front of students, whether you're a student. You want to be the best that you can be so that when you're here or when you're out there, you're performing at your best. Often these institutional elements serve as ends unto themselves. When leaders are faced with an array of moral, political, legal, and practical imperatives to which they must consistently mount responses, they must take into account a range of constituencies: parents, legislators, students, faculty. But they most often respond reactively rather than anticipating its challenges and being proactive. That's in this mindset. Our goal for the next 2 days is to deepen our collective understanding of inclusive excellence and learn how we might take these elements and intentionally mobilize them for learning. I also hope to strengthen our work in some ways, talk about how we can think about our colleagues in other institutions and how we might be able to work together as a system. Although it appears to me that you all are trying to distance yourself from the system. I can't make a comment about that, but this is UAlbany, University at Albany in what state? I'm sorry. I don't want to start any controversy here. So, this intentional institution consistently considers the impact that decisions have on learning and learners. And in so doing, leaders recognize that these decisions may have a different impact on some learners. As you said, people learn differently. This recognition provides impetus for leaders to address the disparity of the impact of their decisions. In an environment that is working to make excellence inclusive, each of its parts is used to enhance learning for everyone in it, as well as the organization itself. So it's not all externally faced. It's also about the organization learning as an organization. What are we doing right? Where are we making progress? Where do we need to fill gaps? That's at the organizational level. Some argue that there aren't enough resources to make excellence inclusive. The intentional institution leverages resources by creating synergy at the points where the various elements within the environment intersect. They create synergy by communicating its aspirations to all of its constituents, coordinating the tasks that must be done in ways that conserve resources, investing in quality, as Anne Farron would say, and collaborating across all units to have the maximum impact on individual, collective, and organizational learning. When we intentionally work to make excellence inclusive, we work to extract the unique contributions that every individual brings to the learning enterprise and use it for the learning of all, including the learning facilitators, which includes student affairs professionals, librarians, and even departmental secretaries. I'm sorry, administrative assistants, right? As well as for faculty. These individual and group assets that all of us in the environment bring to the learning effort can be tapped for a deeper understanding of course content, which places the learning in a social context of real people and real events. In other words, this intentional institution that is working to make excellence inclusive uses its learning facilitators, its resources, and facilities in the service of learning and knowledge development. The Greater Expectations Report, which was the precursor to LEAP, calls this a learning-centered institution. So the picture of this institution, intentional institution, looks more like this one, where the facilitators, resources, and facilities are aligned in ways that are focused like a laser beam on the learning where they intersect. It's focused on the learning we expect of our students, of ourselves, and our institution to gain in the interaction in the environment. I'm arguing that if we're focused on the learning, we can't help but see that many of the current educational environments, in many of the current educational environments, our measures of excellence are exclusive rather than inclusive. While such exclusivity may help us easily manage our institutions, it won't help us achieve the learning outcomes all students need to thrive in a 21st century, diverse, and globally interdependent society. And it won't help our nation's much-needed revitalization. In our new conception, everyone is included as part of diversity. This is why I asked you to write down what is your definition of diversity. Because I don't think we often think about everybody in this room being part of diversity. Men, Christians, white people, wealthy, heterosexuals, and those with fully functioning physical and mental abilities are part of diversity. It's not about people who look like me or gender like me. It is everyone in this room, because every single one of you brings something unique to the enterprise. Now imagine all of us working together toward this common goal of learning. Imagine the choir singing this same song. It's about the learning, it's about the learning, it's about the learning at every level. And so if it were like that, then we become the choir of the New York Philharmonic with a different season of music every year, taking itself forward every year, doing something new. The choir one year might be singing gospel. The choir might be singing the Requiem the next year, but always moving forward, always singing in unison, and always understanding that each of us has a different part and a different voice to contribute to the whole. And what about that audience? How enthused and excited they are when they hear it, and ready to move with you and wish they could do it. I'm one of those, so don't get me wrong. This won't be easy. Rather, it will require a lot of work. You're already doing a lot. But we need to work differently and more strategically than we've ever had before. This also means that each of us needs to share responsibility for this work. Every one of us needs to share responsibility. Sometimes we lead, sometimes we follow, and always hold ourselves accountable for achieving our consensus goals. These consensus goals must be both inclusive and differentiated, and to do so, we must attend to equity. Now, I'm going to try not to read a lot of this, and I won't, because can you all see that in the back? Okay. I want to pay attention to this. Is my pointer working? This equity-mindedness refers to the outlook, the perspective, a mode of thinking exhibited by practitioners and others who call attention to patterns of inequity in student outcomes and are willing to assume personal and institutional responsibility for the elimination of inequity. This includes being color conscious, noticing differences in experience among racial and ethnic groups, and being willing to talk about race and ethnicity as an aspect of equity. Equity perspectives are evident in actions, language, and problem solving, and cultural practices. Who's helping me? Thanks, Daryl. These are quotes from Estella Ben-Simon, who I mentioned earlier, who leads the equity scorecard work. But I want to bring attention to another way of thinking about equity, because we often think about it in terms of faculty, we often think about it mostly in students, but we forget that we have issues around staff as well. So in working with another campus, I've created this notion of equity with a staff focus. Because too often we don't see staff rising and getting the opportunities that they need in order to advance in their careers, be it academic administration or administrative work. As you can see, it parallels nicely with the student focus. So, I'm going to read another one of Edgar's. I'm sorry, I can actually turn this on. Another one of Edgar's pieces. So why is it important for us to define diversity for ourselves? We need to explore more worlds. We need to discover our own humanity in distant places, learn to be different and the same. We need to engage global concerns from the vantage point of ourselves and learn to live in a world in common. To do so, we need to understand more deeply and richly who we are. Who we are, that is reflection. Why I asked you to define diversity in all of our multiple dimensions, which include, in the most consequential way, our national identity, and for many of us, that's as Americans. What does that mean? So, now it's time for you to do something for me. There's something in the middle of the table that looks like this. I want you to each take one. It's called the Poor Woman's Clicker. I want you to fold it first in half like this, and then in half like this. The key with clickers is that it allows learners to respond anonymously. So I want you to all look at me as you respond. Don't look at your neighbor, look at me, and don't be doing this. And respond to this question by using 1 if your answer is yes, 2 if no, but then you got to flip it to 3 to respond, and do like this, okay? That way, your neighbor doesn't get to see it, okay? Seriously. I see you laughing over there. Does UAlbany gain institutional benefits from having a more diverse campus community? 1, yes. 2, no. 3, I'm not sure. Ready? Let's see. Oh, we do have the choir here. Hi. Okay. No disagreement here. But what is it? What are those benefits? So, you all responded yes. So I want you to turn to your table mates, and I want you to talk to each other about what those benefits are. Name them, own them. Seriously, you said yes, so come on now. Get with it. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. What are some of the challenges? Now, I want you to pretend I'm up there, because I am going to walk back up there, but I'm going to give them some clickers. I call these the Poor Woman's Clicker. I want you to look at the 3 3 responses. and then decide which one of these are the challenges that you most resonate with. Others need it? Others need more? Okay. You got clickers? Everybody's got clickers? I'm on my way back. Okay, everybody ready? Your answer, these are the three possible responses. Using your poor woman's clicker, select from among these three. What are the challenges to having this diverse community? And I know these are some typical ones, so I thought I would put what I thought were typical. If it's other, put 4, okay? So, without looking at each other, I want you to put your clicker on your head so I can see them, so I can get a sense for where, oh, good, good. We got tables where there are differences. And I want you to talk a little bit about what those differences are. But most of you, what are the greens? 2s? 2, I think, has outweighed everybody. So there'll be a lot of people talking about that. So let's start with those who have said 1 or 3 or 4, and then go to 2, because there are a lot of people with 2s. Okay, starting now. Did everybody get an opportunity to voice their challenge? I want you to continue the dialogue, but thinking a little bit more broadly. In addition to discussing why you chose this response, please also discuss the topics as indicated below. If your response was 1, discuss the specific quality dimensions you are concerned about. If it was 2, discuss specific challenges you personally have faced. And if you answered number 3, discuss what you think leaders should do to better prepare for the opportunities and challenges of a more diverse community. I just want to stimulate a little bit more than just reporting why you responded the way you responded. I'm going to give you about 3 more minutes to do that. Does everybody understand what I'm asking? But it's here, but it has to start with people on the first conversation. And that was okay. I want to ask you to share with each other a little bit of the most important things that you heard at your table. I don't want to recap. I hate report outs. I really do. Because it's cathartic for the person who's talking, but everybody else is like, oh my goodness. So I want you to think about somebody at the table who you think would be able to collectively figure, or you all together say, okay, this was the most profound thing I heard at the table, and I think it would be useful for other people to hear it. And I'm going to give you a minute to do that. And then I'm going to start coming around. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. You're the choir, remember? You're here voluntarily. So if you want to, don't say anything. You say, oh, nothing came out of this table that we thought was worth sharing. Or we want to keep it private. There are lots of responses to this now. And one of the responses is no response. Okay? So 1 minute, and I'm going to come around and get some responses from you. Okay, who's going to be the first brave soul? Or spirit? Or person? Oh! I don't know if this table counts. Got too many high-powered thinkers here. No. I'm not going to give up the mic, okay? I said I'm not going to.
Sorry, I didn't even. Hi, my name is Ajan Crump. I am a junior at the University at Albany, and I am the director of programming. Just wanted to introduce myself.
Hold on. Okay. She's sharing. Thank you.
One of the major things that I brought up is the fact that we're all here, and I think it's really great, and Dr. Miner said that basically we should do this more often, have the professional development as far as diversity, but one major thing is that I think we should have more students here and just include the student leaders on this, because in essence we are all here for academic excellence with the students, and we're all here to enhance the quality of life within the students, and that's what students leaders are here for as well. Another thing that we did talk about is I held up number one when we were, and number one basically touched on that we don't reach out for diversity because we're finding the best person for the job. I've had several sociology classes where I've debated the same topic. One of the major things that I think is lacking when it comes to finding the best person for the job is that there's not enough outreach in different aspects. I gave the example that over the summer I spoke to the EOP, Educational Opportunity Program, about the student association work that I do and the football work that I do, so that if you want to get involved with this is not unreachable for you. You can definitely be where I am in 3 years. You can be where I am in next year, in a couple months. This is what you're able to do. And this is something that they haven't talked about, they didn't know. So it's just about reaching out to other people and making sure that you're not comfortable with just the people who are already aware about what's going on.
Thank you so much. Yay. So I'm going to try and add something to what I hear, and I want you to reach out to on the internet and go to Fresno State and look at what they've done in the last 18 months. They've done some phenomenal work, and the most important one for me is that in the last hiring cycle, there were, and I think this is on one of my slides, I can't remember whether I put it up or not. Don't move, because I'm really small. They hired 48 new faculty. What percentage of them do you think were people of color? Ten? Less than 10? 90? 48? 48. 100%. Whoa, that's dreaming. Okay. But it's a good dream. 50%. They did not lower the quality. They re-examined what excellence means. They did broader outreach. They expanded the number of invites to campus. And as the provost said, or the VP for Academic Affairs said, it didn't cost that much more to bring in 6 people instead of 3. And lo and behold, when they brought those 6 people in, they found that the people of color weren't as high quality as the others, and more so. So we have to rethink what we do. It's not just putting your hands on inclusive excellence and moving forward and saying, oh yes, we are embracing inclusive excellence. It is about what you do, what processes you put in place. But if you expand the pool and you keep still reaching out to the same old people, what are you gonna get? It's like with the definition of crazy, right? You keep doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. Or maybe you're expecting the same outcome, I don't know. I'm not here to say. But I am saying you cannot change without changing. Changing the way you think about who is acceptable. What is quality? One of the questions that they asked everybody in the interview process, what is your experience with communities of color? Now, Fresno State is an HSI. It's a Hispanic serving institution. So it wasn't just that they could say, oh, you know, I wrote this paper on, you know, Latinos in South America, or I have lived in a Latino community for the last. Now demonstrate how you have used that on campus, was the follow-up question to every candidate in the interview process and in the on-campus. You think you see some different answers? I think so. I was blown away when the provost told me this past August, his success. I told him he should write about it because I think what he's doing is he not only held people's feet to the fire in terms of broadening the search, because he was willing to stop a search when it didn't appear to be broad enough. He provided education, not training, because we are educators, not dog trainers, education for the search committees. He did them himself. And he brought in people who understood what it takes, doing and developing relationships with HBCUs, HSIs, and other minority serving institutions, tribal colleges. It doesn't just happen because we want it in our heads. It happens because we purposefully, intentionally do something different. Okay, next table. Yes, no, I'm not giving it up. I don't go there.
Last night we went to part of this celebration of the president was the Tutu sisters, Sandy and Naomi. They spoke. Oh, good morning. That is Tandy, yes. And they spoke of apartheid and breaking down those constructs, and there's clearly been a physical change in terms of the space and the physical space that we see. No longer do signs say no, fill in the blank, whoever it is allowed. However, how do you break down the constructs of apartheid in the mind and how it forms default ways of thinking, default modes of engaging people or not engaging them, of dismissing them because of whatever reason that a person may unconsciously be aware of? So apartheid has been broken down physically. Discrimination has been broken down physically in spaces that we can see there is access. However, there is still mind constructs that form ways that people are not necessarily gaining access to a table.
It took a long time for us to get where we are right now. It's not going to happen tomorrow. But every step we take, if it's intentional to move away from the apartheid mindset, moves us away from it. And I would argue, much like the civil rights movement, didn't require 100% of the people who were affected by being disenfranchised to participate. We started with a critical mass of about how much percent? Anybody know? 20 to 25%. I argue we spend way too much time on the bigot and the racist. We're not going to change those people. Who we can change are the people in the middle. The people who recognize that justice has to be done in order for us as Americans to fulfill our real ideals. Equity, equal opportunity, and an equal opportunity to a life fulfilled. All of us, I think, believe that as Americans, if you are an American. And if you're not, I'm sure wherever you're from has some ideal that is similar to that. So instead of spending all of our time trying to beat the racists over the head and call them a racist, let us work with those who really just want to know how to do it. And I then think we do create a critical mass of people who can move forward and leave those other people behind, because eventually they're going to figure out that they're the ones on the outside and say, well, wait a minute, why am I on the outside? Because the thinking is now that social justice is more important than your individual interests of keeping power or holding a mindset that makes no sense in a world that says it's Christian or Judeo, or if you believe in God, and even if you're an atheist, I think people who are atheists have a spirituality that is different than the rest of religions or organized religions. I'm an agnostic myself. I'm a recovering Catholic, sorry. But I do believe in my heart of hearts that what we do and how we are matter. How we are with each other matters. It matters greatly, especially in these environments where people come together to learn. And if we believe that some people can learn and others can't, then we're in the wrong calling. It's as you said, different people learn differently, and it's our job as educators to figure out how do we do that best. Now, I'll grant you, all of you went to graduate school, right? And all of you are experts in your field. But they didn't really teach you about being experts in how people learn. Am I right about that? So if we're going to be in this environment and be teachers, it's incumbent upon us to become excellent educators. That doesn't mean jumping on a table and doing all kinds of tricks to engage students, but something as simple as having them talk to each other in the classroom. How hard is that? Raise the questions such as this, and in that way you figure out where's the mental process going wrong, so that I can help turn them in another direction, instead of, no, wrong answer, who got the right answer, which is what we do in K-12. I'm suggesting that we not focus all of our attention where we can make little difference, but focus our attention on where we can make big difference. And if we can make some inroads there, then we got a critical mass of people moving forward. I'm not saying that it's right, but I would rather spend my time with people who I think can learn. I also think we should spend our time questioning them and not having them question us. So why do you think like that? And watch them squirm and try and answer that. And then, well, okay, it's okay. I don't need an answer. I'll see you later. We spend way too much time trying to change people rather than having them see themselves for who they are. Okay, who else is the next brave soul? He's like, you could.
You don't want to give up? Okay.
I learned that from Oprah.
Well, thanks for volunteering me. So this table, I think...
Say who you are.
My name is Pedro Caban from Latin American, Caribbean, U.S. Latino Studies. And so our table is like a microcosm of the university, and what we have a consensus on is that difference works. Because what we arrived at was a realization that each of us had a very different perspective on a similar problem. And through engaging this problem from our own particular perspectives, we began to rethink our own modes of approaching a problem, kind of question ourselves, begin to think about those sets of values that define for us what appeared to be the only or the correct answer. So it creates, for me, a situation of ambivalence, a certain situation of uncertainty, which then creates, I think, a positive learning environment. So I think that's what we learned here.
And what do the cognitive psychologists say? It's in that space of cognitive dissonance where the deepest learning happens. When we challenge people's existing notions and try and move them in a new direction. Excellent. Yes. You just moving your hand, right? Don't call on me. Okay, I'm coming. In the meantime, I hope that you see this as an opportunity as a start of the dialogue and not the end of it. Oh, I'm not giving it up.
My name is Greta Petrie, and I work in communications and marketing. And what I learned at my table was that while we have, I think we have 33% students of color in the freshman class this year. I could be off on that. But not all disciplines have that representation across the board. And if a student of color is the only one in a classroom with 33 other students, they might feel very isolated and not supported. And also, sometimes we don't just look around in our own offices. We take for granted what's there, and we don't see that maybe some offices are more diverse than others. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. He said, nice job. Next. Any more? You want like this? Okay, I'm gonna make this the last one. Come on this side.
There you are. Okay. Hi, I'm Nancy Balowich-Negron, and I'm the director of the Disability Resource Center, and have done this kind of work for 4 decades, so I just want to preface that remark. And I just want to encourage the university to keep considering people with disabilities in the diversity family, because what's really difficult about working with this particular population group is that money has been the barrier between civil rights and people with disabilities. As much as we do on campus, and we do so much already, we still need to do more. And we're sort of at a new frontier right now. We've sort of got access underway, although we still have more to do. Yes, we make our programs accessible, but now we need to start looking at the information technologies on campus, the learning platforms, our purchasing policies, all other ways to integrate people with disabilities to our campus. That's our challenge from my perspective.
Are you representing the perspective of the table or just you?
We did talk about this. They may have other things.
Okay. They're all nodding. That's good. I want to say a little bit about persons with disabilities. Too often we categorize people into these boxes, female, transgendered, African American, Latino. But we don't often recognize that we are multidimensional people. I said I was a recovering Catholic, and I meant no harm by that for those Catholics in the room, although this new Pope seems to be a breath of fresh air. He said, yeah. So I am a spiritual person. I'm African American. I am many things. And that we should begin to look at each other in these multiple ways, so that we can understand the richness that everybody brings to the enterprise. And I think that's often something we forget, that many people with disabilities have a hidden disability. Students with dyslexia, one of the fastest growing disabilities that students have is mental. And we can't see that. And so I wanted to remind you that disabilities come in many forms, and that we are all multiple identities. And I thought that was a good opportunity to say so. Thank you very much. So, on to the lessons. I spent way too much time on that. Okay, so I'm going to skip that. So I want to go straight to, by what means do we make excellence inclusive? We argue at ACNU that one of the ways that we could do so academically is to practice one or more of these high impact practices. I've sent Tamra, Dr. Miner, I need to give her props, Dr. Miner, a paper that a colleague and I did, which we call High HIPS, high impact practice, the acronym is HIPS, but I sent her something called High HIPS, H-I, HIPS. And it really talks about not just putting these practices in place. How many of you are practicing 10 of these in your work? 10, all 10. Okay, how many 8 or 9? Okay, 6 or 7. Raise your hand high. I want you all to look around at this one. 4 or 5. 2 or 3. At least 1? Okay, that's not a majority of people in this room. We got some work to do. The ones that are in purple, that was intentional, are the ones that have had more research done on them that demonstrates that these practices actually make a big difference. I've given you another paper that she'll make available throughout your experience. And then the research suggests that these were controlled studies, these were not just self-reports, which is what a lot of the NESI data is about, which is what comes out of the high impact practices stuff. And that was the good news, that these 5 that are in sort of purple have more research done on them. But the bad news is that the research, for the most part, is not disaggregated. So it's not disaggregated by class, some of it is done by gender, but almost none of it is done by race or ethnicity. So we can look at aggregate data and think, oh, we're doing really great because we're having these practices in place. But if you disaggregate it and you find that certain groups are being disadvantaged by it, it's time to look at it and see why. One example, at one of the UW system schools used to had an honors program that set the threshold of being a participant in the honors program at 3.5. They looked at the data and saw, well, first of all, there were no people of color, or 1 or 2 in a class of 100 students of in the honors program. Well, when they looked at the data, they felt like, that's somewhat arbitrary, 3.5. What's the difference between a 3.25 and a 3.5? About a 20% increase in the people of color in the honors program. Same quality, they didn't change the curriculum, didn't do anything different, just changed one of the metrics. And that's what I keep saying, you have to look at what you're doing and change what you're doing, not lower the quality, but be more inclusive by just thinking differently about how would you know it would be any different if you put it at 3.0? 3.0 is a respectable B if you're in a school that's giving honest grades. Well, you know what I mean. Not grade inflation. But that means the students working hard and doing work, and maybe that honors program would challenge them to be even greater. Who knows until you try? You can always pilot something. Okay, so with these practices, why are these practices important? Sorry. Why are these practices important? I got some data or questions from Dr. Miner regarding questions that people want me to address tomorrow. And one of them, and this is no offense to anybody who wrote it, because I don't know who wrote it, that we don't want to be seen as a vocational school. That the language that we use suggests that we're vocational. I would argue that all of what we do are preparing people for a vocation, including being faculty members. It's a vocation. And we have to we have to stop thinking in an elitist way to say that this is not a vocation because I'm a professor, or I'm a college president, or I'm a VP for academic affairs. It's still a vocation. So if we disabuse ourselves of that notion, then we look at data from employers where most of our students are going to be going, being employed in the marketplace. Here's what they say that their students need. Many of the things that we're not necessarily giving them. Again, I'm going to point to this. Look at the top one. 89, then this is old data and it's gotten even worse. 89% say that 2- and 4-year colleges need to do more. We're not doing enough. Because if I don't know the last time you talked to a student that was not about academics. In a paragraph, 2 paragraphs, 30 times I heard like. How are we teaching them? So when do we give them the practice in oral speaking? Do we make them make presentations in our classes when they do a paper? They just do the paper, turn it in, you grade it, and give it back. How about just every now and then asking them to get up and present and give them constructive feedback on that presentation so that they have skills and get better at it? One thing you should notice about these outcomes, or these practices, they're all active. They all require active participation. That's part of what makes them high impact. So, I'm going to move further, faster, and just underline one more, and that's the teamwork skills and ability to collaborate. That in a competitive environment, often students will work by themselves because they want to be the top of the class valedictorian or the salutatorian. And if I work by myself, then I don't get to share my great ideas with other people. But when they get into the workforce, the expectation is that you work in a team, that you work with others for the end product, whether it be successful students or a product that you're bringing to market. It is an expectation. And so employers say, by an overwhelming number, that we're not doing, we need to do more to help students learn in teams. How many of you use teamwork? I'm not going to make you raise your hand. How many of you use teamwork as part of what you do in the classroom? And then, how do you manage those teams? Do you expect them to manage them themselves, or do you provide excellent guidance for them so that they can get the most out of being in a team? Too often, especially if there is one student who is seen as less than for whatever reason, disability, color, gender identity, when they're seen as less than, do you think they're participating well without your guidance? I think it's something that we need to be assured of. So, here's another set of statistics more. Again, the purple ones are ones that I wanted to highlight given the audience. But this notion of knowledge of cultural diversity in the US and the world. That says I'm supposed to stop. Am I really? What time is it? I think I started early. You tell me. I got it. Okay, we can talk some more. Okay, so if we actually focus on the things that employers, and these employers are broad-ranging, not, whatever. I'm not going to make any judgments about what is employment. But higher education institutions are, in many cities, the largest employer in that city. I know in Nashville, where Vanderbilt is, it was the second largest employer to the state. So make no bones, when we talk about employers, we're talking broadly here. Okay, so this is a more recent report from AAC&U that looked at these particular gains with high-impact practices and showed that the more high-impact practices you put in place, the greater the gains, particularly compared to those with no high-impact practices. And if we're actually looking at academic excellence, one would argue that it's these that we're searching for. And in all cases, less means less. Now, why do we do all this? I would argue what we're trying to do is to build people who have content knowledge, personal and social responsibility, but also all of those things are combined with being culturally competent. Now, again, I use Fresno State because I guided a subcommittee who, one of the things that kept coming up in their statement and in their strategic plan was building culturally competent individuals at all levels of the university. And so someone pushed back and said, well, what do we mean by cultural competence? And there really was no definition that they were working with. We had been using as a working definition the definitions of diversity, inclusion, and equity that I showed earlier. But they didn't have a definition for cultural competence. Well, this is what they ultimately adopted and are now marketing for their, what they call ASPIRE, a strategic plan for inclusion, respect, and equity. Isn't that cool? Think about it. Can people in the back see it? Do you want me to read it? Cultural competence is the state of having and applying knowledge and skill in 4 areas: awareness of one's own cultural worldview, recognition of one's attitude toward cultural differences, realization of different cultural practices and worldviews, and thoughtfulness in cross-cultural interaction. Over an extended period of time, individuals and organizations develop the wisdom and the capability, to examine critically how cultural worldviews influence perceptions of power, dominance, and inequality, and to behave honorably within the complex dynamics of differences and commonalities among humans, groups, and systems. It's a very comprehensive definition of cultural competence, in my opinion. But I want you to know, this was not easy. It was a very hard conversation to have, because some people wanted to use marginalization here. And that was okay, but we had to be thoughtful and intentional about what does that mean for some people. Does that language carry baggage for some people, and would not allow the definition to be inclusive? So as I said, I don't think this work is easy, but I think you are all up to the challenge of doing it, and doing it very well, because you're thoughtful people, you're committed people, you are here. But this kind of deliberation results in things like this. Now, they weren't operating in a vacuum. We looked at various definitions from various places. Mostly, Health and Human Services have the most research in this area. And in fact, the medical community, let me ask you to write this down, AAMC, the Association of American Medical Colleges, which both does accreditation and education in medical schools, is far and above most accrediting agencies that I am aware of, and most associations that I'm aware of, around building cultural competence among the medical profession. They have in fact, they're doing a series of education programs. They're pretty expensive, but I think it's worth it to have people go and come back and help others learn what they learn. But there's a video on it that talks quite a bit about how we develop cultural competence, and the things, some stories that we need to be thinking about as we think about these worldviews, and very practical examples. It's a 30-minute video and well worth your seeing. And if you click AA2AsMC.org. And they have a diversity click that you go to. I think it's number 3 at the bottom. So this is hard work. It's not easy, but as I said, you're up for the challenge. So this is where we're going, and I want to conclude with this comment from Edgar. Inclusive education is good because it's just, but also because it teaches more and teaches it better. Exclusive education, on the other hand, is abusive and corrupt. When diversity education pays adequate attention to both difference and unifying context, difference and commonality reinforce each other. That's a very powerful statement to me. Because we often say we shouldn't be focusing on our differences. We ought to be focusing on our commonalities. But what does this say? That we actually need to focus on both in order to extract the best out of each one. And with that, I'm going to say thank you so much. You are a rapt audience. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, we have time for questions. I don't like just doing Q&A. I mean, I just think we ought to engage you all along. But I'm sure that there are things that maybe you have questions about that you'd like to ask. Maybe we can engage a little bit more. Or are you tired and want to get to the restroom? Feel free to do so. So you all know what inclusive excellence means, right? And you all know how to make excellence inclusive. No questions. I'm good with that. I'm fine with that. Dr. Minor, would you like, what? I can't either. Must be. Oh, there's a brave. Yes, right. You're supposed to give students enough time, right, to gather their thoughts. I don't give it up. I don't give it up.
Oh, you're not? I thought I would ask you to clarify something. Last night, Tandy Tutu talked about it's the little things that make a difference, and you commented earlier about people that can make a big difference. I'm not sure if I heard that correctly. And I know you're a recovering Catholic. And St. Therese, who was the little flower, said it was the little things that add up to great differences. So I'm just wondering maybe if you two want to discuss this a little further.
We can, but understand that when I say big things, they are little things. Like when you asked the question about how do you change people's apartheid thinking. What did I say to you? I said, just ask the question, why do you think like that? That's a little thing. But it could have a profound effect on the person who's acting in that way. Because I bet you dime on a dollar that person has really never thought about why they think the way they think. Not really. And not really thought about the impact that attitude, that behavior has on other people. That it's just a way of being that is unexamined. And being something or somebody in a higher education environment that is unexamined is unacceptable. Because that's what we do. We examine all kinds of stuff. Cells, history, art, dance. But we can't examine ourselves? That's a small thing, but it's a big thing for many people. So I was saying, let's not focus on trying to change that person, just do that little thing of asking the question, why do you say that? What are you thinking when you talk to me like that? Why do you behave in the way that those are small things to me, but they could have a big difference. And that's what I mean by these things are not big. The VP for Academic Affairs at Fresno State said Alma, it didn't take much. It just took looking at what we do and looking at the different metrics and saying, okay, we need to do, maybe if we change this, this, and this. But look at the impact. It's huge. It's huge. For a community that was clamoring, here we are in the middle of the Central Valley of California, and we have 1%, 2% Latino faculty? That's ridiculous. Oh, they're not there is the common refrain. Well, how far are you looking? Oh, nobody would want to come here. Well, how do you know? She's laughing because these are the same stories you hear in South Africa, right?
Had them been? Yeah, no, not really.
So you talked out? Okay. But did I sort of, okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question, though. Did it address what you, okay, good. Oh, yes, I'm coming to you. I don't give it up. I don't give it up.
You don't leave it up. Okay. My question has to do with, my name is Barbara Sutton, and my question has to do with economics and whether some of the institutions that implemented positive changes, whether there was any shift in terms of allocation of resources, or how do you deal with these issues in terms of fiscal crisis, or when there are particular priorities that are not necessarily at odds with inclusive excellence, but may have effects on whether you're able to achieve this or not.
I am so happy you asked that question. I mentioned Anne Farron's name earlier. And you probably missed it because I said it very fast. I talk fast. Anne Farron wrote a book. It's old now, but it's still very relevant. And the title of the book, and it's still, you can probably still get it online from ASTNU in a PDF, Investing in Quality. We often don't make the hard decisions about which programs we're going to fund because we don't really look at the curriculum to say, what do students need? So we have graduate programs with only 2 students enrolled. But what does that take? It takes a full-time faculty to make sure that they get through dissertation, at least 1, and possibly 2 or 3. How much is that investment? That's what I said. The intentional institution creates synergy at the points where those resources intersect. Guess who's the chief lead for that Aspire at Fresno State? The chief financial officer. Now, you want to know who knows where the money is. That's the person who keeps the university's budget. And so instead of saying, no, we can't do that because we don't have the money, she's always thinking, where are the points of synergy? So one of the things that came up as a part of the committee discussion was, we live in a Latino community and all our signs are in English. All of Fresno State signs were in English. Oh, that's easy, she said. We change those signs about once every quarter. And we can not only just change it into Spanish, we can change it so that we're reflecting the other parts of the community as well. That didn't cost any more money. They just decided to make a change in something they were already doing. And that's what I'm asking you to do. Think about the places where you're already doing things to reach out to the community, to reach out to students, to reach out to faculty who you're trying to attract, and say, how can we do this differently with the same amount of money? Maybe a little bit more, like the chief academic officer at Fresno said. It was a little money, but you'd be surprised at how little money it took to bring in those extra people. Bring them in to campus. So that whole notion that we can't find them or they won't come here, you find them, you got to bring them there to say whether or not they're going to come. You can't have them make that decision in a phone interview. If they're one of the top candidates, you nod your head because you know, right? You know. I'm going to come and get your story in a minute. So think about it. I'm not saying it's cost less. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that if we first examine what we have done, what we are doing, and see whether or not we can create efficiencies by combining things and using things differently, we'll find that we have the money to do it. I'm going to come to you. Is that okay? No? Okay. Other questions?
Oh. I'm talked out, but I do want to make a little comment. Sorry, I am talked out.
I'll just hold it.
Okay.
You too. It's about equity.
But I did want to make a little comment that this is all a process. Nothing happens overnight, and you can't expect it just because you want it to happen to actually be the way you want it to be. It's hard work, and but if you get the buy-in from people, and this is what all this is about, is continually talking and being together in community to get buy-in so that the process moves forward. What the lady over there who was speaking about apartheid and how it damages all of us, or how we're all damaged, and that's also a process in getting out of that damaged persona that we are all part of. A few months ago, a physician at one of our pediatric hospitals, a white gentleman, was driving home after he had been at the hospital, and his car was hijacked, and he was actually killed. They took his car and he was killed. And later my dad is a patron at Tygerberg Children's Hospital, and later in the week, one of the doctors was speaking to him. They had actually found the people who did this, and so they were at a breakfast, and so she says to him, she says, this is a white pediatrician, and she says, "Father, I want to confess something." So he says, "Yes." And she said, I thought when we heard about the hijacking and the killing of our colleague, that the perpetrator was black. That was my immediate assumption, that it was some black people. It happened to have been some young white men. And so my dad said to her, "Actually, you know what, when we saw the news footage, I have to admit to you, I was relieved to see that they weren't black." So, this is years late after our democracy. This is the man whom we all talk about, our moral conscience in South Africa. But there is all that damage. So it's a process. You can't expect it to happen overnight, but you have to keep on with the process, because to fail at it is not an option for yourselves or your students.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's a very powerful story. So, yeah, I'm coming back to you.
I'll keep my hands in my pocket.
Actually, it's supposed to relieve you so you can use your hands.
So I will. So this is my question. So back, you may not remember this, you might be too young, but way back in the 60s, there were student uprisings and struggles.
It's great having something, right?
to open a space in university, not only for new knowledge, but also to hold public universities particularly accountable for having a faculty and administration that was more reflective of the changing demographics of society. So, what's your sense about the responsibility, ethical as well as in terms of all the other considerations, including obviously academic excellence, the responsibility of a public university to be much more proactive in recruiting faculty and administration that's more representative of the general state of the population?
I love the question, because the reason why I keep talking about Fresno State is because it is a public institution in the middle of a rural area. It's considered urban because it's in Fresno, but it's in the middle of the Central Valley, where there's grapes and everything else and avocados and everything growing there. So you have the mix of the intellectual community and the working class community. I do think it has a specific responsibility because it is public, but I don't want to let privates off the hook either, bottom line. But I wholeheartedly agree. The question is, what do? We have to change the mindsets. have to change the mindsets. I think at some level, the work in the 60s was a very good thing in the 60s, but as it progressed, it became absurd. People were filling positions to get numbers, and I think that's why we are partly where we are right now. In terms of, for many people, affirmative action meant, oh, we don't hire the best person, we just hire somebody to fill it's a woman, it's a African American, it's a Latino, it's somebody, I don't know, whatever box we're trying to fill, that's what we're doing. But I think what we didn't do was to understand that if people were not successful, it wasn't because they weren't intelligent. It wasn't because they couldn't do the work. Part of it has to do with the isolation that people feel when they get into roles. And so if they saw any, quote, less than, it was their self-fulfilling prophecy, not the ability of the people. So it's a cycle that I think made people feel like affirmative action was not a good thing, and why I think we have the backlash that we have to this day. And I think that's why we have to change how we move about it, how we broaden the sphere of people we invite in, so that we can see, you know what, if we invite folks in and we ask them the questions that are important to us, we'll see that, hey, you know what, we were wrong that we couldn't find anybody, or that they wouldn't come here. Yeah, they have a responsibility. They have a responsibility to cast a wider net. Did that answer your question? No. You wanted me to say something else, didn't you? Okay. Other questions? Yes. Oh. I ain't giving it to you either.
Oh, okay. Elga mentioned a little bit about the diversity dialogues that we are co-sponsoring with the Senate ULC, and this is actually our second year into it. We've modified them, and we continue to look at what's happening across the country with these programs at other institutions and try to modify what we're doing, but it's hard. It's hard for a lot of different reasons. Can you talk a little bit about the value of such dialogues and offer any kind of suggestions or guidance or advice?
Yeah. Until we can have open and honest dialogue with one another across our differences and in common, I think we will be stuck in the morass that we are now. Look at our legislators in Washington, where I live. They have forgotten what it means to be diplomats. They have forgotten the meaning of negotiation and of listening to one another. And I think they have forgotten that we're doing this work in the best interest of our country, and in this case, of our university, our cities, our towns. I'm not saying that people in Washington don't have a fundamental belief in what they're talking about, but it cannot be by all means necessary when you leave huge fractions of the country, even their own party, out of the conversation. So these dialogues, it seems to me, provide a way for people to, in a safe environment, talk about their fears, talk about why there is mistrust, to talk about what we need to do to move forward, and to say to one another, I understand. Can I walk in your shoes for a few minutes so that I can understand? Can I give us opportunities to reflect on ourselves vis-a-vis the person whose shoes we're walking in? We walk away different when we do that. I know at least I do. That if we are going to be excellent educators, we have to be reflective practitioners with ourselves and with each other. It's a must. How can we build that collaborative environment that we've been talking about all morning and not talk to each other? I think these provide the safe space to do that. And so the second thing is that I understand you have some very high quality facilitators. And I think that's really important, that people know that they're not going to go into a room and have somebody beat them over the head and call them a racist or a homophobic or whatever ism you want to talk about. That's important because people have to be preserved as to who they are and come to themselves to know why they feel the way they feel. I can't tell you. You have to come to that. It's called taking people where they are and try and move them forward. That's what we do educationally. We take students where they are and we try and move them forward to a higher level of knowledge. We have to do that in everything we do, including these dialogues around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, how many of you have been to a dialogue yet? Raise your hand. Those of you who are thinking about it, raise your hands high. Talk to these people so they can tell you what the experience is like. It is an uplifting experience. People think they dread it, they fear it because they think somebody's going to beat them over the head. But the idea around the dialogues is to do just that. It's the dialogue. Raise your hands one more time so people know who you are, so they can, so they can see you. Okay. I told them to raise their hands if they had been a part of a dialogue. So I want them to know who to go talk to, because experience is the best teacher. I commend you for doing them, and I hope that they take off so that you have more than you can subscribe to. I want to thank you all for your patience with me and for my learning, because every time I do one of these, I come away with something different and I'm a richer person from having interacted with you. Thank you very much.
Now I can have the microphone.
Oh, yours.
I too thank everybody for coming, and thank you for your presentation and remarks this morning, Dr. Pedersen. We will have a break. We have about a 15-20 minute break, and we will allow Dr. Smith to get set up, and we look forward to deepening our understanding, and we'll move on to our next session in around 20 minutes. Those of you who have registered for the next session, our lunches will be set up momentarily. They are box lunches. Grab your lunch, have a seat. We'll have a working lunch. Those of you who did not register for this afternoon's session, we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you.